Welcome. I'm Christopher Kenneally from Copyright Clearance Center, where I host the podcast series Velocity of Content. This program, on the final day for the Charleston Conference, turns the spotlight on innovators and innovation. Innovation is seeing what everybody has seen and thinking what nobody has thought. Our focus in the hour ahead is on innovative and entrepreneurial thinking for the benefit of libraries and librarians. 5 innovators have presentations highlighting new ways to help you solve business and professional challenges. You will get a look at exciting new technology, and you will learn how existing tools are being utilized in exciting new ways. We will open with pre-recorded presentations from each of our panelists in alphabetical order. Mark Cannell is the CEO and founder of Figshare, which provides research data infrastructure for institutions, publishers, and funders globally. Cannell created Figshare while completing his PhD in stem cell biology at Imperial College London. Dr. Leslie McIntosh is the CEO and founder of Ripeta, whose mission is to improve the reproducibility of science with minimal burden on scientists. Dr. McIntosh is an accomplished biomedical informatician and data scientist who is passionate about mentoring the next generation of data scientists. The Ripeta video also features Cynthia Hudson-Vitale, co-founder of Ripeta. Hailing from and still working in library science, she has experience providing research data services support to scientific principal investigators, specifically in the areas of data management and data curation. Eric Olson is product owner institutions with the Center for Open Science, a Charlottesville-based nonprofit technology organization with a mission to increase the openness of integrity and reproducibility of scientific research. He leads product and sustainability initiatives for the Open Science Framework. Elizabeth Robey is publisher, Mindscape Commons, a Coherent Digital company that is the world's first online resource for immersive and interactive content in mental health. She is the editor of many recognized databases, including counseling and therapy in video series, psychotherapy transcripts, client narratives and reference works, and social work online. And we will close the videos with Richard Wynne. He is the founder of Rescognito, an open environment where researchers and research professionals are recognized for a wide range of behaviors and contributions that benefit the open research ecosystem. Richard has deep knowledge and experience of scholarly workflow, having worked for Silver Platter in the 1990s, and most recently for 20 years at Aries Systems, developers of the editorial manager journal peer review system deployed to more than 8,000 journals, and which was required by Elsevier in 2019. We have allotted time at the end of the session for audience questions and discussions, and we will go to the videos now.
Thank you, Chris, and hello to everyone joining this session. There are many questions surrounding emerging technologies in education, such as what role do they play in a university setting? What can they offer educators? Can they enhance teaching and learning? Should we go down the path of investing in these resources? And if so, which ones should we invest in? Or is it just all kind of fun and games? When I began my own research on the use and prevalence of emerging technologies at universities, I discovered that many were in fact investing in makerspaces, VR labs, innovation centers. Some of these labs were housed within libraries, some in departments, some received funding from grants, some had funding from new technology budgets. It really ran the gamut. These are photos from my visit to Penn State University and their Center for Immersive Experiences. What I also discovered in my research was that there seemed to be a lot of games in the VR space and less educational content and hardly anything in the area of mental health training, mental health education. And this was an area that I was really interested in learning more about. And so while I was learning more about VR labs and centers for innovation, I was also looking into research around VR. And I found studies that indicated improvements in learning outcomes, motivation levels, engagement, improvements in empathy, enhanced empathy. And I was finding that VR had a place as an innovative pedagogical tool. So given all of this, investments in emerging technologies, a shortage of educational content, research on learning outcomes, and then of course tech-savvy students, digitally born students who are comfortable with this new technology. We developed Mindscape Commons. So Mindscape is the first and largest collection of virtual reality video content for teaching and learning in mental health. It's designed for faculty and students to use. The 360-degree video content, which you can view immersively, can be accessed with an Oculus device such as this, or with a simple $5 cell phone viewer like this that you insert your cell phone into and view it immersively. If you don't have access to a headset, the content can be viewed on your laptop or just on your cell phone. Imagine you're a student learning how to help someone heal from a very difficult experience. Part of being a successful mental health provider is, of course, to have a great deal of empathy. And we do hope Mindscape helps to develop that important skill. What does it feel like to be bullied, suffer from depression, or face homelessness, for example? This video clip coming up next shows an example of one of our virtual microcases. We developed these microcases in collaboration with faculty and graduate students at Mercer University in Atlanta. These are 3 to 5 minute long immersive videos where students are exposed to clients in distress. And we're viewing this on a laptop right now, but the idea would be that you could use a headset to really feel like you were right there in the same room as the client.
Oh, I'm here because she wants me to be here.
I feel my heart beating really, really, really fast, and I get so nervous, and I feel like my breath is getting shorter and shorter.
Like, my thoughts are always just about what could possibly go wrong, or like all the time. It's like just constant chatter in my mind. I can't get it to stop.
Dr. Tyler Wilkinson at Mercer University uses these microcases in his teaching, and this is what he has to say about them.
Now, students typically don't have interactions with real clients or more interactive experiences until they get near the end of their program. What these virtual microcases do, it's almost like a living and breathing case study where students have a very immersive experience that more closely approximates what they'll find in a counseling context. And this allows me to really add and deepen my teaching and learning abilities with students such that they have more of a heightened awareness about what it's like to be a mental health clinician in the real world.
Just a few weeks ago, I attended a mental health conference where faculty from Mercer University presented research on VR microcases, specifically featuring clients with suicidal thoughts. And so in the study, students viewing the microcases felt more prepared and less anxious in working with a client on with suicidal thoughts than with a written case study. So furthermore, the immersiveness had a strong effect on these students, as noted in the quotes. It was an actual person sitting down in a chair telling me things. It felt like I was in the room with him. The immediate sound in my ear just made it that much more real than just watching it. So some interesting findings and research. But beyond the VR and the research I've just been talking about, I do want to note that Mindscape includes an open directory of faculty and student research projects around VR, open source 360-degree video content that we include on our platform and link out to, as well as commercial VR project listings, all of which are freely available to the community. So this free directory within Mindscape, we hope can provide a way for faculty and students to learn more, to share, potentially collaborate in this exciting space. So going back to the original questions, can emerging technology enhance teaching and learning? In our own experience with Mindscape, and thanks to Mercer University's research, as well as other research, we are seeing that VR has a place in teaching and training, and we're really excited to be working with more universities in this technology and content space. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and hello, everyone. As you just heard, I've spent the last 20 years working in the development and distribution of peer review systems for scholarly journals. As part of that experience, I observed that today's systems are overly complex and don't do a good job of adapting to the needs of open scholarship. As a result of that, I decided to found Rescognito based on the simple idea that researchers should be recognized for the specific contributions they make to the research process. You can think of Rescognito as a tip jar for open research, and I'll tell you more about this now. Let's go back to basics. Each year we spend about $2 trillion globally on research. That work is undertaken by about 10 million researchers who produce research outputs. Those outputs are evaluated by a process of publication and citation, and that generates a signal back to research funders telling them which projects to invest in and which researchers to support. So, when libraries pay for journal subscriptions and APCs, you're not just paying for content, you're in fact paying the costs of research output evaluation. The problem is that citations as the mechanism for doing this are not doing a good job of research evaluation. They were never designed for that purpose. In fact, the research QA department is broken, and there are 3 reasons for this. Firstly, there are mechanical problems of identification and attribution. This leads to imprecision in the process of citation and recognition of research contributions. Often the display is also unstructured, using idiosyncratic taxonomies and not machine readable. Secondly, the publish or perish culture has resulted in counterproductive incentives. Researchers take shortcuts and engage in practices such as salami slicing, p-hacking, harking, citation packing, etc. And thirdly, our current citation format ignores a lot of important contributions, milestones, and content such as software, protocols, data curation, and peer review. And women and minorities and early career researchers are more likely to be middle authors and therefore possibly entirely excluded from author lists as well. So what would a better system look like? Well, firstly, it would produce a higher quality signal than citations. It would be open and free to individual researchers. It would be transparent, making it much harder to game. It would be democratic and fair, with less opaque gating than we see in today's systems. It would be more focused on factual assertions, such as the materials used in a particular process, and it would be more granular, allowing for more attribution and assertions that are verifiable. By being standard-based, it would be more interoperable through the use of APIs and other techniques. So, what is Rescognito? Rescognito is a simple idea. It's a platform or a tip jar for open research. And we provide 2 forms of recognition. The first is peer-to-peer recognition, where anyone with an ORCID ID can recognize someone else with an ORCID ID for a contribution to the research process. Secondly, we offer curated or institutional recognition, where the person doing the recognition is an institution and provides recognition again to an individual based on their ORCID ID. At the heart of this process is the Rescognito ledger, which is a place to store aggregated recognition in a structured, attributable, and granular format. As you can see from this screenshot, anyone with an ORCID ID has a Rescognito open ledger simply by adding the ORCID ID to the Rescognito URL. It's very easy to use. You can click the Recognize button next to the person's name or the Recognize button next to a particular DOI. It offers granularity and accountability and a broad range of recognitions. Let's take a deeper look. So what does peer-to-peer recognition look like? You can see here that we're looking at the open ledger for Raul, and he has been recognized, and you can see this in the form of the first line entry here, and the date of the recognition. we can see the number of units of recognition that he was granted, and we call those COGs, that's short for recognition. And the type of recognition in this case was a peer, and the peer is identified by her ORCID ID. We can see the reason for the recognition, in this case, a taxonomy term from the credit taxonomy of writing, and we can see the particular DOI or manuscript that related to this recognition. What does curated or institutional recognition look like? Well, it's very similar. It appears in the ledger in the same way, except the source of the recognition is identified as institution, and the specific organization is identified by their name, a logo, and their raw ID. Again, the recognition terms are displayed. In the case of institutional recognition, we can see an aggregated view of all of the recognition that the institution has undertaken. In this case, the Research Data Alliance of the US has recognized people for community engagement, webinar contributions, awards, and committee work. And any collaborating organization can add their raw ID to the end of the Rescognito URL to see this kind of aggregated view. How is institutional recognition curated? There are three ways. It can be done manually by an authorized individual. It can be done semi-automated, where you send us a spreadsheet that's output from one of your existing systems, or it can be fully automated with a real-time API from your system, such as an IR to Rescognito. I'm going to give you three quick library use case examples. Many libraries are signatories of the DORA Declaration, and part of DORA is the commitment to be specific about the contributions of each author to a particular publication. So let's take the case of an author from your institution who's published in bioRxiv. You can take the DOI for that particular preprint, you can add it to the Rescognito URL, and that will generate a page where the specific contributions of the authors can be selected. So this is a very easy way to support your DORA compliance. This is a free service and it generates a number of visualizations which are useful and helpful for authors. The second example I would give you is institutional repository deposit and the recognition for authors that do that. This can be included in their ledger and gives visibility to the fact that they contributed to the IR. The third use case would be to amplify the prizes and awards given by your institution by including them in the Rescognito ledger with an award of recognition and a link to the award. In the case of Rescognito, we provide a JSON API, so all of these recognitions can be read out and combined with other sources of data. In this case, data from Crossref and Unpaywall to show Twitter and publication related to recognition. So if your library would like to experiment curating open research, please contact me. Thank you.
Good morning, Charleston, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today about Center for Open Science and the OSF. And our structure this morning is going to be a bit of a research data adventure narrative where we're going to explore a little bit about the center and about the OSF and a resource that hopefully I can make available to you with all of these paths explored later. But just today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about what the center is. The Center for Open Science, our mission is to increase openness, integrity, reproducibility of research. And we are a nonprofit, mission-driven culture change organization that focuses on accomplishing that mission through a few different initiatives and teams here at the center. And our lens, our framework, the diffusion of innovations and using that as a way to catalyze culture change by making infrastructure and tools that enable early adopters that are excited about open science practices and accomplish those goals, making those processes continually easier, and then over time, communities adopt those practices and make them normative and then even rewarding and required. And we use our team here in a few different ways. We have infrastructure team, which is product, and team like myself and developers. We also have a research team who studies the research of research, and a policy team. And when all of us work together, that's really how we determine the destiny of the center and our initiatives. And so our goal is to create workflows that will, with the OSF, support the entire research lifecycle. That's really where the infrastructure element comes from. And it's not to replace tools across the research lifecycle that researchers already use. And in fact, we really try to integrate those either directly with the OSF or with an open API that we support, along with members that develop integrations with that API. And really, the goal is to continuously improve the OSF so that it supports that whole life cycle and makes it really easy for researchers to structure and deposit all of their different kinds of data and lots of different file types. We'll even render right there in the OSF in the browser, make it really easy for researchers to use their own data in the future, as well as for others to read and understand what they're working on. And eventually, what we'll talk about today is some goals of having research communities really adopt those practices and make them their own and make them a part of their normal workflows in their communities. And then finally, the policy team is working with publishers and funders and institutions to understand what their goals and priorities are, and then to help them realize those goals through research and advocacy. And you're probably hearing from them. And when you hear really neat news stories about open science badges and pre-registration. So with that, we're going to zoom out a little bit here and look at our adventure paths again. And we're not going to have time, obviously, to look at all of these different options, but we are going to look at one and really focus on one of these heroes, one of the paths that many of you here in the audience will certainly identify with, which is research librarians. And looking at a couple of these options that are available to us, I think it would be neat to talk a little bit about how you are supporting researchers at your institutions that need to share their data, need environments that help them collaborate with their peers and make their data available and accessible for themselves later in the life cycle, as well as for readers of their eventual papers and other outputs. So we're going to look at a OSF project workspace here, which is one of the several interfaces that are available on the OSF. And each of these projects, a very flexible environment, but they all have metadata, as we see here, but also a detailed activity log, so you could see over time how those projects have changed and evolved. Also, permissions for contributors at multiple levels, so that you can have involvement from your team and your community at a level that makes sense. Maybe they only need to read, or they don't need to modify those particular section of your projects. Those are all options on an OSF project using components. These are sub-projects within your project structure that can have the same contributors. They can have different contributors. They can have different files, different permissions, but they can all live within that same workspace. And then you can make all or some of that project public when it's ready to be shared and have other researchers begin to use that data. So that's one of those paths of OSF use cases that we are really excited about, and we think researchers and research librarians take advantage of. And one of the other ways to look at it is how can we help you support your researchers and then keep track of what they are doing on the OSF. So just research data in general, non-publications can be really difficult to track from your perspective and without detailed reporting. So what OSF institutions will do is aggregate using single sign-on authentication, aggregate all of the work, public work that your researchers are doing onto a landing page so anyone can come and see all of the really exciting research and data sharing that your researchers are doing. In this case, at the University of Virginia, they'll aggregate on that landing page, and then all of those projects also have the university badge included. And then we even have detailed dashboards that are not public pages because they have even more information, including the number of private projects all of your researchers are involved in, as well as their departments and the number of users that you have on campus as a whole, and the number of projects as far as an aggregate number. And as we mentioned before, a big part of the OSF's scalability and growth is integrating with more and more tools and institutions and repositories. And so that really is something we're focused on. And many of the OSF institutions members are part of that process. So that is our super quick adventure through research data on the OSF, one of many paths. So I hope you'll reach out to me and we could talk a little bit about your research data path and support you on the OSF. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie McIntosh. I am the CEO and founder of Ripeta.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Hudson-Vitale. I'm the co-founder of Ripeta along with Leslie, and I also wear another hat where I'm the Director of Scholars and Scholarship with the Association of Research Libraries. And we're very excited to talk with you today about the importance of research integrity and some of the tools that Ripeta has developed to really support research integrity on academic campuses and in the scholarly communication ecosystem. So just to start us off a little bit, many of you have seen the announcements and executive orders and memos that have come out of the White House since President Biden took over in January of this year. And research integrity and supporting scientific integrity has been a core component of his presidency so far. Today, I'm here to ask a couple of questions about Ripeta and research integrity in general. So Leslie, I'm interested to hear from you. How do we check the integrity of scientific reporting?
There's a few things. We really are looking at 3 areas of quality indicators. Is it research? And we're really looking at research, and we're looking at professionalism and looking at reproducibility.
Cool. So just to dive into these a little bit more, when we talk about research, what does that mean for Ripeta?
Yeah, so that really means being able, and all of these are being able to automatically check to see if these qualities exist at a pre-submission phase in a publication, even at a preprint, so should have the core components of research. The other thing that's critically important is that we need to see something as the study objective or a hypothesis. What's the purpose of the study? And these are some of the checks that we can do in an automated fashion now to check the science of it.
Nice. So you mentioned research. There's also professionalism.
Yeah, so this one is becoming more and more important. And we look at things like verifying the author, such as, are the authors or is the author real? Can we verify that that person exists and that person is a researcher? If so, are there other things in a publication that we can find that are important for the professionalism of the work?
Nice. And lastly, it's about reproducibility, right?
Exactly. And this was where we really started, was on reproducibility, to trust that the potential to reproduce the research would be there. Can you actually find the data? We call that data at the end of the rainbow. And again, these are automated checks that augment human decision-making when it comes to a publication.
That's helpful. So I'm curious if you could kind of just walk listeners through, or viewers, I guess I should say, how Ripeta works.
Yeah, so a paper is submitted via an API or a web interface. This is the part I like to geek out on. It's analyzed for those trusts in research professionalism and reproducibility, kind of like a sushi menu. Do you want to look for certain specific items? Is that really important for whatever field you are in? And then the results can be returned to a user in the form of a PDF or a JSON. The report can be given to different audiences, but it's the same information in the background in the database.
Nice. Now, can you talk us through kind of the tools as well?
Yeah. So one of the tools is the Ripeta review. So this is the one paper at a time. And we offer Ripeta review plus feedback to quickly allow for quality improvements. But then we also give recommendations so people not only get the information, but they understand what to do with something that is there or something that is missing. And you can use this if you're using a peer review. I use this for my own peer reviews so that I can quickly give feedback to the author to maybe make the structure of the paper better before I look at the science of it and evaluate the science.
There's also Ripeta reports.
Yeah, the Ripeta report really aggregates all of the information together. So all of the data over a corpus of papers, say in a department or within a center of university or a journal if you're a publisher, and then can actually give that kind of health check of what you're doing within your research at your institution or at your entity, I should say.
And this is publicly available too. So if people wanted to actually see how welcomed they can see it as a real example. This last tool is a dashboard.
Yeah, it's actually just putting that report into action. We can give you that view into how you're doing, what has seemed to work, and where it's not working. So really being able to break that down more into an interactive level.
Nice. And with like real-time data too. So that's the end of our slides. Is there anything else, Leslie?
Well, we are going to be available for question and answer just a minute. So we look forward to those.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Hannell. I'm the founder and CEO of Figshare. I'm here with my colleague, Dan Valen, who will be answering questions after I'm done. And we also may have, for those who are local, my colleague, Andrew, who is attending the Charleston conference. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak for my 7 minutes today. I'm here to share some new news from the world of Figshare. For those who don't know Figshare, we provide data repositories for publishers, for institutions, for governments and funders. And we also have a free version called figshare.com, which allows people to publish their data sets, get a DOI at no cost. So in the data space, jump through a couple there. In the data space, we are evolving, right? 10 years ago when Figshare started, I don't think we knew about how fast the culture would change. So we have a lot of people who are generating lots of different file types and looking for a place to make them available, but it's very nascent field. It's very new to a lot of people. They haven't made data available in the past. And so we're learning a lot about these new practices, but the funder mandates that are coming down the road are really pushing us with regards to when we have to make data available and what is the generic reason for doing this, right? Academic publishing works. And so back in 2009, Jim Gray and some colleagues at Microsoft Research came up with this concept of the fourth paradigm of research. That is that you have 4 stages of how research has evolved. So empirical evidence, the sky is blue; scientific theory, the sky is blue every day; and then computational science, which we've been in for the last 50 years or so, which is using advanced compute programs to help us with our research. And Jim Gray came up with this idea that the fourth paradigm is that the computers are going to do all the work for us. And so there's a book that you can read on this. But if you look at the things that we need to do in order to achieve some of these goals of having the AIs and the machine learning do all the work for us, some of the things that Jim said we needed back in 2009 was you need the literature, the derived and recombined data, and all of the raw data available for everybody. So we see this increase in scientific information velocity and a huge increase in science productivity. So we've seen that recently. AlphaFold from DeepMind, which is built on top of the Protein Data Bank and UniProt, some very homogeneous, very well-described data sets. AlphaFold has come along and made huge strides. There's not a lot of projects like this, but I do think it might win the Nobel Prize one day for the huge advance. It's really living that fourth paradigm dream. So we've also seen recently with COVID the need for moving fast. And I think this is the thing I'd like to comment on is fast, open, good publishing. That's what everybody needs right now, because in this example here, you have 3 labs working together or not working together, building on top of each other's research in order to get a new treatment. It could be a vaccine. These dotted lines are to help are requests for data in the past. And all it takes is a passive, I don't want to respond to that email in order for this to be held up, and the time at which the vaccine gets discovered goes further along down the x-axis. We have also seen recently the idea of bad data, and this is here. It's great to have open data on this front because the BBC can pick up on things that percentages were calculated incorrectly, you know, mistakes, everybody makes mistakes, but also numbers unlikely to occur naturally suggests that there's some kind of fraudulent activity going on here. So we do have data forensics, but you can see how publishing fast and open isn't necessarily the whole solving of the problem here. We need to have good publishing too. And we see this with Figshare.com. So the free Figshare, we see lots of people publishing data sets and calling them data set. It's a new idea. They have to make their data available, but they've never done this before. So who's to tell them best practices? If you don't have a great library and great librarians, publishers on telling you, then you can use free products like Figshare, but you have a problem with the quality of the metadata in particular, particularly if we were moving towards fair data, findable, accessible, and interoperable and reusable data. We need to go back to Jim Gray's diagram, and I think we need what extra checks can be added at each level. So that's one problem we're facing with this fast but good and open data. But we also have the problem, what do I do with big data? Terabytes of data. There is nowhere to publish terabytes of data because there is a very real cost in hosting that data, making it persist forever. And that's why we've launched Figshare Plus. So Figshare Plus at plus.figshare.com is a place where you can publish very big data sets. So starting at 250 gigabytes and moving up to 5 terabytes and beyond. We have some features here. They are ranging from 250 to over 5 terabytes and up to 5,000 files per data set. You get personal email support for your data deposit from Figshare's data sharing experts, helping you curate your data. It's stored and preserved. It's indexed in places like Dimensions or Google Dataset Search. You have a broad range of licenses to choose from. There is funding available for these things from the NSF and the NIH, so we can help you put it into your grant for that. And you get a DOI from which you can track the impact of all of the research and all of your files being reused. There is a cost, as I mentioned. It's transparent on our website. This is a real cost for hosting data forever. So there is a cost associated with it, and we need to be aware of that. We need to be cognizant of it as we go forward. But this is what we need if we want to get from big quality data sets from which we can have global paradigm shifting advances in science. So if you are looking to publish your data sets, you can submit them, we will curate them, we will accept big files, and we will get them published for you. And this is where I think the fast but good and open publishing can really come together. It's great for researchers' careers, and it's also good for humanity. The comment here, the speed at which any given scientific discipline advances will depend on how well its researchers collaborate with each other. In the future, we don't need to be able to collaborate. You need to build on top of work that's gone beforehand. And so plus.figshare.com is where you'll find it. I'm Mark Hannell. Dan will answer any questions after the show. And if you're a publisher or an institution that's looking for data curation and big data publishing services, please let us know. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for your attention during those really wonderful presentations. And as has already been noted, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of consistency in thinking and approach that we saw there. We'll try to explore that in the time we have left in our discussion. The discussion, of course, will happen if you help us. You have to ask us a question, ask the panel a question. If you're online, let us know who the question would be directed toward. And we'll do our best to get to as many of those as we can. If you're in Charleston, I'm going to assume that there's someone there to help assist to be sure you can share your questions as well. So we really do thank everyone in the room, in the Gold Ballroom in Charleston, as well as those online for being with us. And as Mark Kenneally was just saying, we are joined for this discussion by Dan Valen. Dan, welcome. Dan joined Figshare in 2014 as its first US-based employee. And he says he currently handles all product-related tinkering for the company. So I'm sure he's the right person to ask if you have a question about Figshare and what it's doing. I have some questions for the panel, and we will go in alphabetical order this time. We have to go all the way down the alphabet to the M's to get to Leslie McIntosh. Leslie, are you with us there?
I am.
Hello. So you talked about trust in science and how trust in science is so important to you. It should be important to everybody, I think. But it's especially true that trust is necessary and important with regard to data. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the systemic issues that make that so challenging today?
So one is the step that we're working towards, which is sharing data as the community. So even finding the data is challenging. But then, of course, once you get the data, what is data or what are data? We can't even decide whether it's singular or plural, of course. It is also a challenge. To automate those processes, that's where it comes into place. Where are the data stored? Are they in a repository? How are they curated? This is a library audience. I think this audience knows the pains of that, but we call it at Ripeta, we call it data at the end of the rainbow. So it's not enough to just say, to make a data availability statement, we can check for that. Are the data in a repository? We can check for that. Are the data actually there? Or is it a picture of a potato? And do then the data actually pertain to the research themselves? So I kind of skipped over and assuming we all agree that research integrity is very important and got down into the nitty gritty on that. So hope that answered your question.
It's a good place to be with trust, of course. And Eric Olson, with the Center for Open Science, our audience today in Charleston online, as well as in the Gold Ballroom, of course, are predominantly research librarians. So Eric, first, make sure you're there with us.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. So talk about how librarians can support researchers if they want to engage with open practices generally or use the OSF. I think that's a really important question because the role of librarians is changing, and open science, open access, all the opens that we are working on, open research, open data, has really shifted the role, added to the work that librarians have. So talk about the way they can support researchers and perhaps how OSF helps them.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, to the previous question, the signals of trust that can or cannot be sent by the infrastructure itself. The medium is the message, so how much of that can librarians support if they know the tools are there and can bring some of that forward. And this is great timing because we just broke down our entire training service that we've offered for several years. We're going to completely throw it out and built it from the very beginning. And we just presented to another librarian conference a few weeks ago our process for that. And we're about to relaunch those. And it's all about librarians being able, or other research support staff and administrators being able to choose pieces that they need their researchers to be more comfortable with and more familiar with, and then be able to implement those services either themselves or with us administering those training services. So offering them ways to provide resources and insight that's not only the OSF, there's lots of good tools out there. So just giving them enough resources that they can identify what is useful for them and their research communities.
All right. Well, you mentioned, Eric Olson, that the medium is the message. And Elizabeth Robey, welcome again to you. Be sure you're online with us there.
Yep, I'm here.
Hello, Hi. Good to see you. So I was saying that the medium is the message is an interesting point here, because of course the medium that you're working with is virtual reality. So I have to ask about the learning curve on that. I wouldn't know where to start. I'm sure for faculty that's a challenge too.
In my experience talking with many faculty, there have been some very comfortable with the technology. They love it. They've been using it for gaming, for example. But for many, there has been a learning curve. But I will say that there's an openness to learn and an excitement around the resource, because mainly because they know their students are so tech savvy and really kind of wanting this. I just have to say, I got an email from a faculty member last night. She said, I'm writing this, they're just trialing Mindscape right now. And she said, I'm writing this email directly after my assessment and counseling course. I premiered some of the capabilities of Mindscape to my students. They're really excited about the video and content, and they're going to provide feedback once they've had a chance to navigate it themselves. So this faculty member is taking it right to the students, and I love that. And I think what I mentioned in my presentation is that we knew there'd be different levels of comfort with this technology and different levels of access to it. So that's why we knew you could access the content through, a headset, as I mentioned, an Oculus, or a $5 device you can put your mobile phone into, or just access it on your laptop. So we knew those different entry points were going to be very important. And I will just really add just very quickly is that I will say, because this is a librarian conference, with librarians in general, there's just been a real openness to this technology and an excitement around the educational content, because what often happens, from what in my experience, is that a VR lab is created and then you have to find the content. So one librarian emailed me last week, and she said her college is investing in the AR VR space, but a larger budget for content is still being worked out. So they did a one-year membership to Mindscape, and she said, I need to educate our leadership about content. Having Mindscape on board will help that. So that was a direct quote from a librarian. So so that's my answer to that.
Okay, well, it's a great point about the relationship, the partnership between the technology and the content. That's something that I think we're seeing throughout these presentations. And when it comes to adoption, yes, hello.
Hey, Chris, hi, sorry to interject. We have a question here in the room, and it's actually from me.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And I know when you get in the zone, it's hard to pull you back.
That's all right. Well, I'm just trying to watch a lot of dots, and I think I recognize the voice. I think that's Heather Staines with Delta Thing.
Yes, thanks, Chris. It's fantastic. It's great to get updates on all these various projects. I'm continually amazed, by the progress that's made. But just a few years ago, I ran a plenary session on AI here at Charleston, and one of our presenters was from Meta. And we were all really excited because CZI had bought Meta to keep it, make sure it stayed nonprofit. And then we know how that turned out. But I look at these amazing initiatives. Some are in nonprofit already, of course, and others are new and just starting out. But from a sustainability standpoint, if you're a librarian or anyone who cares about open infrastructure, how can we make sure that these really great ideas and needed services can be sustainable in a way that will keep them available, to the scholarly research infrastructure?
Well, it's a great question, Heather, and you beat me to it. I was thinking about the M word as well, and it has come up. It's unavoidable. So I'll throw it out to anyone on the panel here who wants to address that. I'm sure maybe several do, because sustainability is an important question. Anyone with some thoughts on that from the panel?
I could just real quick talk about this a little bit, and our experience with the center. We were grant funded for many years, and knowing that was not something that was going to be sustainable forever. And I say that just as we got a $18 million grant to run some biomedical research studies, but I came in last year primarily to begin some of those services that I just talked about, some of which are, like the OSF, completely free for researchers, others that are suites of tools that are not free. They are services that we provide to support institutions and publishers and funders, because we know that that is what's going to be required to maintain the platform itself, to sustain the maintenance of the platform. Nobody's going to give you a grant for that. And I imagine many of my colleagues that spoke today have the same experience with the long-term 10-year plus plan of keeping those platforms and initiatives going.
Right. It's going to be a real challenge, and perhaps private-public partnerships are among the options to explore. We do have a question as well from online from Marion. It's a question for Dan Valen at Figshare. And Dan Valen, do you anticipate the cost for storing big data sets will go up or down as cloud services expand? And she's curious, Marion is curious about security, and if that's where the costs really are in the service like Figshare. Tell us about that.
Thanks, Marianne. And yeah, I actually think that question ties into the previous one around sustainability almost in a certain way, because one of the things that we were really thinking hard about with Figshare Plus is building out a model that works for researchers. It's our first kind of foray into B2C. And we really, as Mark noted, it was a result of researchers getting in touch with us asking for ways to store large data. But researchers are often funded by individual grant projects, or they don't have the ability to pay year after year to store and host their data. So we really had to think about the different ways that we could make this service available while still ensuring that it was something that we could in turn support. So when it comes to the costs of storage, yes, we're built on Amazon Web Services, so we largely use S3 for just storage. Of course, in thinking about something like Figshare Plus and accepting larger data sets, we had to look at the egress fees and downloads, and across the entire platform, trying to average out, how many downloads our data sets receive. And as you acquire or purchase more storage, the costs do come down, but those costs are still real. So when it comes to passing on those costs as they come down, that's also something that we really want to look at. As far as security, the platform, we haven't really touched on. It's kind of a funny one, because Figshare Plus is no more secure than or no less secure than just any of the other services that we provide across the Figshare platform. So yeah, I don't really know how to answer that last part of the question.
All right. Well, appreciate that question, Marion, and your answer, Dan Valen. And Richard Wynne, I have a question for you. Relates to Rescognito and those COGS that you talked about awarding. Richard, to be sure, you're here with us online?
Yes, I'm here. Hi there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so you mentioned that, as I say, that researchers can be awarded COGS, which is a kind of a citation of a sort for excellence and units of recognition, I guess. So tell us, who gets to decide how many COGS are awarded for, or granted, I should say, for a particular activity?
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I think the idea that we're focused on is the emphasis is on the patterns of recognition rather than the specific size of the units. And so the COGS are there to make it tangible for people, to allow some amplitude in the signaling. But the really important information is the patterns, such as this person was recognized by an institution, or this person was recognized by another person that was recognized by these 10 other people. So it's that kind of analysis we hope makes the most sense. And so institutions are the people who decide the level of COGS they want to award. So when they contract with us, They contract for a certain amount of recognition, and then they can dole that out one at a time or by the thousand if they want. But obviously our pricing is related to that. So there is a scarcity in that you don't just want to recognize people for an unlimited amount, because then that ruins the signal. And just circling back to the question on funding and sustainability, I think there's a huge amount of resources and money in the system. It's just directed at old ways of doing things. And I think if libraries could really peel off some of the resources that they already spend to look at new ways and innovative ways, there's absolutely no problem with sustainability. But it is going to take the budgeting process to change from saying, okay, we have this huge budget. We already have allocated 99.9% to these existing platforms. What can we do with this last bit? That really has to change if we're going to make some of the open research more sustainable.
Well, it's a terrific point, Richard Wynne, and probably a great place to end our conversation, because it really is about the future. All of the innovators today have been pointing us in new directions, and we need to reserve some space on our programs, in our minds, for doing things in new and innovative ways. So I think that bit of advocacy is really perfect for ending this session. I want to thank our participants, Leslie McIntosh, the CEO and co-founder of Ripeta. Leslie, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Eric Olson with the Center for Open Science. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
Elizabeth Robey, publisher of Mindscape Commons. Good to have you with us too.
Thank you, Chris.
Dan Valen with Figshare. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
And Richard Wynne, founder of Rescognito. Great to have you as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, Charleston.
And we want to thank, too, Darrell Gunter for organizing all of today's innovation sessions at the Charleston Conference. I'm Christopher Kenneally from Copyright Clearance Center and host of the podcast series Velocity of Content. Goodbye for now.